Otis Ray Redding Jr. was born on September 9, 1941. He was an American singer and songwriter. He is regarded as one of the greatest singer-songwriters in the history of American popular music. He was a seminal artist in soul music and rhythm and blues. His life had its share of unfortunate events, drama, and rumors, especially when it came to his supposed romance with Lola Falana. Watch this video to find out about the rumors Otis Redding's children have recently confirmed. When Otis was just 3 years old, the family moved to Tyndall Heights, a predominantly African-American public housing project in Macon. At 10 years old, he started taking drum lessons while still keeping up with his singing. At 15, he left school to support his family, joining Little Richard's backing band, the Upsetters, and performing in talent shows at Macon's historic Douglas Theater. The family joined the Vineville Baptist Church, where Otis started singing in the choir and even picked up the guitar and piano at an early age. Otis eagerly joined the band at Ballard Hudson High School, where he performed beautiful gospel songs on the radio and even won prizes in talent shows. Just when things seemed to be looking up for Otis, life took an unexpected turn for the worse. His father fell seriously ill with tuberculosis, leaving his mother as the sole breadwinner of the family. Otis had to step up and become the man of the house at a very young age. He took on various odd jobs, like digging wells and working at a gas station, all while tirelessly continuing to pursue his passion for music. Pianist Gladys Williams, a locally known musician, inspired Redding. He sometimes played piano with her band at the Hillview Springs Social Club. In 1958, he joined Johnny Jenkins's band, the Pine Toppers. With them, he toured the southern states as a singer and driver. It all started with a talent contest hosted by disc jockey Hamp Swain. Upon hearing Otis's performance and realizing his backing band needed serious musical assistance, Jenkins offered to help. With Jenkins by his side, Otis performed Little Richard's Heebie-Jeebies and wowed the crowd, winning Swain's talent contest for 15 consecutive weeks. Redding often cited Little Richard and Sam Cooke as his influences, saying, "I used to sing like Little Richard, his rock and roll stuff. My present music has a lot of him in it." When Little Richard made the switch from rock and roll to gospel music, Otis found himself hired by the Upsetters. The pay was decent, with him making about $25, which by today's standards would be around $264. Jenkins later worked as Redding's lead guitarist. In 1960, Redding moved to Los Angeles, where he recorded his first songs. He later toured the southern United States on the Chitlin circuit with Pat T. Cake and the Mighty Panthers. Jenkins' band, the Pine Toppers, included Redding when they signed with Atlantic Records' Joe Galkin, leading to his famous Stax recording session in Memphis. A spontaneous appearance at a Stax recording session led to a contract and his first hit single, "These Arms of Mine," in 1962. Stax released Redding's debut album, "Pain in My Heart," 2 years later. Initially popular mainly with African Americans, Redding's single "These Arms of Mine" became one of his most successful songs, selling over 800,000 copies. In November 1963, Redding performed at the Apollo Theater for a live album recording. Despite financial difficulties, he received support from artists like Ben E. King. His second album, The Great Otis Redding Sings Soul Ballads, was released in March 1965, featuring hits like "Mr. Pitiful" and "I've Been Loving You Too Long." In 1965, Redding recorded his next album, Otis Blue, Otis Redding Sings Soul, in a 24-hour session. The album included his famous cover of "A Change Is Gonna Come." His success allowed him to buy a 300-acre ranch in Georgia and establish 2 production companies, Jodis Records and Redwall Music. Redding's music later reached a broader American pop audience. He began by playing small shows in the American South, but later performed at the famous Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles and toured Europe, including performances in London and Paris. In 1967, Otis joined forces with the sensational Carla Thomas to release a duet album that took the music scene by storm. Not content with just his own success, he also produced Arthur Conley's Sweet Soul Music, which shot up to number 2 on the R&B charts. During his career, Otis faced charges of plagiarism, particularly over the authorship of his major hit, Respect. Aretha Franklin sang the song, and it became a major hit, but it was originally written and recorded by Redding. However, the success of Franklin's version, which significantly differed from Redding's original, led to questions and disputes over the songwriting credits. Despite these charges, Redding's talent as a total package artist was widely recognized. It was at this point that Otis's name became ingrained in soul music, permanently transforming the musical genre. But then, quite suddenly, he began experiencing a peculiar sensation in his throat. By the time he sought medical attention at the hospital, he was met with startling news. Doctors discovered he had an abnormal tissue growth known as polyps on his larynx, also referred to as the voice box. Many would have assumed this was the end of his singing career. After all, how could anyone sing with such a condition? However, Otis was not one to surrender easily. In September 1967, he was admitted to Mount Sinai Hospital in New York for surgery. In mid-November 1967, 5 weeks after throat surgery, Otis Redding began singing again, starting cautiously but gaining confidence. His voice felt better than it had in years. Encouraged, he booked studio time at Stax for the following week. Dick Fraser flew him to Memphis in a new Beechcraft, and Otis called Steve Cropper from the airport, saying, "I've got something I need you to hear." This something was a medium-tempo ballad called The Dock of the Bay, one of over a dozen songs Otis had sketched during his recovery. This song was special to Otis. He saw it as the beginning of the new Otis Redding. The contemplative mood and acoustic texture of The Dock of the Bay were reminiscent of A Day in the Life from the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album. Just as the Beatles revealed their deeper emotions behind their public personas, Otis aimed to do something similar with this song. Steve Cropper and Ron Capone encouraged Otis to revisit and re-record his vocals on some earlier tracks, using the 4-track to overdub his new voice. However, the song that truly defined the project was The Dock of the Bay. They recorded the basic track early on, featuring acoustic guitar, bass, drums, and horns. During the initial take, Otis forgot the last verse and attempted to whistle a melody in the coda. Ron Capone humorously noted, "You're not going to make it as a whistler." Despite this, they quickly perfected the song. Cropper recalled, "We knew when we cut it that it was the best thing he'd ever done. We just looked at each other and said, 'We got it. This is it. We did it.'" Redding, celebrated for his athletic build and his passion for football and hunting, was also deeply dedicated to philanthropy, particularly in supporting Black youth. Otis Redding's love story began when a young Otis encountered Zelma Atwood at the Douglas Theater in Macon, Georgia. They were just teenagers then, full of youthful enthusiasm. It didn't take long for their friendship to blossom into a beautiful romance. In 1961, the couple exchanged vows in their hometown of Macon, Georgia, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. After they started seeing each other, Otis went to California, recorded his first record, She's All Right, in 1960, and stayed with his uncle for about 9 months. He promised to pursue his career and return, which he did, and they got married in 1961. Otis married Zelma Atwood, and together, they were blessed with 3 children. Despite his soaring fame and demanding career, Otis always made it a priority to stay connected with Zelma, even when they found themselves miles apart. Otis was rarely home, as his rise to fame kept him busy with touring and recording. Even when he was in town, it was mostly for business. Their relationship was tight but marked by fleeting visits. Otis wasn't at the ranch a whole lot, Zelma recalls. He was very busy, just beginning to get situated. He'd go out Thursday to Sunday, come back and work in the office until Tuesday, and then go back out. Post-marriage, Zelma stayed in Macon, raising their young family. Dexter, born in 1960, followed by Carla and Otis III. She often saw Otis on TV, performing for growing audiences. "It was a great feeling," she says with a smile. He was such a humble person and appreciated what was happening. Artists back then were different. They did it for the love and had much respect for their bands, family, friends, and people in the music business. Redding's death in a plane crash on December 10, 1967, was a significant loss. But what really happened on December 9, 1967? Otis and his band went on a routine journey aboard his Beechcraft H-18 airplane to perform on the upbeat television show in Cleveland when tragedy struck. After a series of performances, including 3 concerts and 2 nights at Leo's Casino, Otis's next stop was set to be Madison, Wisconsin, where he and his band were scheduled to perform at the Factory nightclub on its final approach to Madison. However, fate had other plans. The private plane carrying soul music legend Otis Redding would crash into the frigid waters of a small lake 3 miles short of the runway, killing 7 of the 8 men aboard, including Redding. And the world was robbed of an artist who had so much more to give. Just a month after his passing, his iconic track, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, was released and went on to make history as his only single to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in January 1968. Another cruel reality is that Otis never got the chance to witness the success of his song, which became the first posthumous #1 single in US chart history. While the world celebrated Otis Redding's musical legacy, the most heartbreaking impact of his passing was on his family. His wife, Zelma, and their children had to navigate an overwhelming loss. Despite numerous obstacles, Zelma worked tirelessly to keep Otis's memory alive and raise their children. After Otis's passing, Zelma faced hostility instead of empathy. Music executives sought to exploit Redding's work, and she received hate mail from racists. However, Zelma stood her ground, maintaining full ownership of his music and establishing the Otis Redding Foundation to preserve his legacy. Zelma was a strong-willed woman who wore huge earrings, spoke in the gravely voice of a well-seasoned blues singer, and smoked an endless chain of cigarettes. But she would get teary-eyed whenever the subject of her late husband came up. There was a big hole in her life. Over 5 decades have passed since Otis's death at 26, but for Zelma, the pain remains. Each December 10th marks a sad reminder of the loss. Despite this, Otis's children continue to uphold his legacy, instilled with a deep appreciation for their father's music. Otis Redding III, the youngest son, was only 3 when his father died. Along with his older brother Dexter, he formed the funk band The Reddings, recording 6 albums in the 1980s. Despite releasing singles that appeared on the Billboard charts, they never reached their father's level of success. The band disbanded after their final album in 1988, and Otis III continued performing, touring Europe as a guitarist for soul singer Eddie Floyd. Under Floyd's guidance, he began performing his father's famous songs. Unfortunately, in the 18th of April 2023, Otis Redding III, the son and namesake of the legendary 1960s soul singer, has died from cancer at age 59. In 2018, Otis III shared how his musical journey took an unexpected turn. Eddie Floyd encouraged him to perform his father's songs, despite his initial reluctance. This marked a new phase in his career, performing at venues from Carnegie Hall to private parties. However, Otis III admitted that his father's legacy sometimes overshadowed his own musical efforts. Despite his attempts to carve out his own identity, audiences always wanted his father's songs. He continued to perform them, living with the emotional turmoil of not feeling fully accomplished. Mrs. Redding, 81, still lives on the ranch near Macon, Ga, that her husband bought in 1965. She buried him beside their driveway, under tall pine trees, and her name is also on the tomb next to his. She appreciates seeing the graves from her living room window. In the 57 years since his death, she has not remarried, she said. Never will. I love being Mrs. Otis Redding. I'm the only one. In conclusion, Otis Redding's life was a tapestry of immense talent, hard work, and significant challenges. Despite his tragic early death, his legacy endures through his timeless music and the tireless efforts of his family to preserve his memory. Otis's story is a testament to the power of resilience and the enduring impact one individual can have on the world of music. His contributions to soul and rhythm and blues continue to inspire and influence artists and fans around the globe. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating stories about legendary musicians.